Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome again for yet another session. This is a very special session that's focused on the youth in Africa and the economic situation and how young people can play their role in bettering the situation in Africa. Before we can start the panel, I would like to invite Mr. Ephraim from AFS Intercultural Program to welcome the participant, and then we can.
Thanks. If you guys can give me a minute. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ephraim Fisher. I'm the Chief Programs Officer here at AFS Intercultural Programs. We're honored to have you here in our office. For those of you who are not familiar with the organization, we're over 100 years old, and we work with young people across the globe, and of course, in pursuit of reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, among many other things. I will not bore you with all the details right now. Myself, personally, it's an honor to have you here. I've studied abroad in university in Namibia, and then had the real pleasure of traveling both for pleasure and for business throughout the African continent. AFS has offices in 5 African countries, and we have a lot of room to grow. So hopefully I can meet some of you and talk with some of you, and we can think about how we can reach youth in your countries as well. Recently, we hosted for the second time the Youth Assembly here in New York. That brought together delegates from over 100 countries, somewhere close to 1,000 delegates here to New York to be part of International Youth Day at the UN, and then to meet for a couple days afterwards, all these young change makers looking to change the world, talking about important topics like the Sustainable Development Goals. It was really great in particular because a third of the delegates came from Sub-Saharan Africa, and that was really exciting for AFS. So we're excited to hear the panel today. Thank you again for being here, and looking forward to speaking with all of you afterwards as well.
Or the guest.
Well, welcome everyone again. I feel really honored and privileged to be moderating this important section. My name is Jude Chisom Erundu. So I will introduce the concept of this panel, and just permit me to just read what I wrote prior to that. It is both an honor and privilege to be here before you to discuss the progress of youth-led initiatives and aspiration in economic and social development in Africa. We have gathered here from all around the world in person and also virtual at a crucial crossroad in history. This particular event theme is more than just a topic for conversation. It is a beacon of hope, inspiration, and transformation for an entire continent, Africa. With approximately 60% of the population under 25, Africa's youthful population has been a source of much debate. This demographic reality brings enormous potential as well as challenges. The future of the African continent rests on the dynamism, innovation, and resolve of this young generation. Their ambitions, dreams, and activities are influencing economic and social progress in the continent. This demographic dividend, if properly utilized, has the potential to catapult Africa into an era of extraordinary growth and prosperity. The youth energy and innovative spirit have the ability to shift African narrative from one of challenges to one of enormous opportunities. We will go into the heart of these aspirations and initiatives throughout this section. We will get the opportunity to hear from the Sierra Leone Youth Envoy in the Office of the President, social entrepreneurs, and change makers. In absence, she will be joining us later, the envoy to the African Union. These young people are pushing innovation, fostering inclusivity, and accelerating long-term success through policy and entrepreneurship. Their stories are testaments of African youth potential, which is being harnessed to address long-standing difficulties and create brighter and more equal futures. However, this event is also about understanding the challenges and difficulties that African youth face. It is about addressing the systematic impediment that frequently impede progress, as well as crucial need for policy and methods that enable, empower, and uplift. We must not be afraid of the complexity and struggle of Africans' journey towards greater prosperity and inclusion. Issues such as restricted access to decent education, insufficient healthcare, political instability, and economic inequality, as well as lack of access to startup funding, continue to pose substantial obstacles for African youth. In this section, we will look at how youth-led initiatives are overcoming these challenges through their stories. We will talk about how important for government, civil society, and the private sector could work together to create an enabling environment for youth-led growth while ensuring the Africa we want and where no one is left behind. By doing this, we will be positioning Africa as the next frontier for economic growth, one that empowers our youth. So please, as we commence, please help me welcome Yulisa Amadou, Youth Envoy in the Office of the President of Sierra Leone, Jedediah Mohammed, Executive Director, International Youth Leadership Institute, Success Ambrose, Managing Member, Broad Heart Human Development, and joining us online is Ambassador Salish Umar. So, please join me and welcome these esteemed panelists. So there's three phases of this panel. One phase is just a general question, just to get to know who the speakers are. So my first question, in her absence, she's not here yet.
Nope.
Is for you.
Okay.
Prior to your appointment as Youth Envoy in the Office of the President of Sierra Leone, you were an entrepreneur, someone who creates jobs and ensures that they'll also get paid. And now you find yourself in a space where policy can either foster or hamper entrepreneurship. So being a policymaker and also you recently got appointed, how are you coping with both?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I think it's a skill because practically entrepreneurship is something that is continuous. And having done it prior to being appointed, I think it's something I enjoy doing. And of course, I continue doing it. However, I find myself in a space where now I am not just, a player, but I'm also part of the table making decisions that will affect other players. In a sense, we have a government now that is inclusive of young people. For the first time in Sierra Leone, we have a president who has appointed young people under 40 years old. We have close to 20 ministers or deputies that are less than 40 years old in Sierra Leone, key positions like chief minister, and of course, for the first time, a youth envoy. So I feel it is a time in Sierra Leone where young people are part of the decision making. We are part of the table. And that is so critical because we are creating an ecosystem that will harness and incubate entrepreneurs. Prior to my appointment, I used to do my personal grants, supporting young people with small businesses. And now, being a key player and being part of the system that make the policies and decisions, I think it is very critical because I know I am coming from the youthful perspective of knowing what the issues are, consultatively engaging other young people. It's a journey that you already understand the space, and then we can definitely contribute to creating the ecosystem that is needed for entrepreneurs to grow in the tech industry, in agripreneurs, and various other areas of interest. So practically, I tell you, it has been a good journey that I enjoyed being the Youth Envoy of Sierra Leone, an honor I wear proudly, thanks to the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone for trusting young people. But then I can tell you, this is the best time to be alive in Sierra Leone, where young people are not just the ones who perpetuate violence or lead demonstrations or strikes, but these are young people who are part of the table, who make the decisions, who are creating the ecosystem for other young people to survive and to basically bring their best to the table. So yes, I can tell you this is the best time to be an envoy of Sierra Leone on youth and youth-related matters.
Wow. Very impressive. I feel really humbled at the same time to learn about your role in the government of Sierra Leone in ensuring that youth-led initiative advances through entrepreneurship and policy. So my next question, general question, is for you, Ambassador Salish, who is joining us online. You are in the social entrepreneur space. Could you tell us what your organization, Self-Light, is all about, how it all started.
Am I audible?
Yes.
I think there's some echo. Could you please fix that? Maybe muting your mic. All right, that's perfect. I'm glad to be a part of this prestigious event. I wish I could be there with you in person, but unfortunately, with hectic schedules and overloading responsibilities here, I could not able to come in person and share my experience. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ambassador Sleshi Salsumar from Ethiopia. It's very late here in Ethiopia, by the way. It's almost 10:30 p.m. So it's getting late. So I have to just give some brief about what I do here and our experience here in SafeLight. Then you guys continue your session. Oh, thank you, so that I can see the people from here. I thought it's just us. But I'm a public diplomat, social entrepreneur, public speaker, and leadership trainer here in Ethiopia. I'm also serving as the ILO, UNHCR, and UNICEF Youth Network Vice Chairperson. I'm Ethiopian Youth Federation Youth Leadership and Public Diplomacy Ambassador. I'm also a World Peace Ambassador and Ethiopian Youth Council member. I'm also running this youth-led organization called SafeLight. So SafeLight, basically what we do is two things majorly. One is we focus on leadership development and diplomacy, especially public diplomacy. So we equip, train, and educate young emerging leaders, and we prepare the next UN leaders, the next AU leaders. As you know, we are the third diplomatic destination in the world next to New York and Geneva. We have got almost 29 UN agencies here in Addis. The headquarters for Africa Union is also in Addis Ababa. So we have to prepare all the young emerging leaders and young emerging diplomats. So we focus on the high schools here in Addis and as well as across the country. We also working with almost 26 universities across the nation. We are partnering almost over 30 high schools here in Addis and the suburbs. So that's the one of the things that we do. And in the other wing, we also focus on the entrepreneurship and employability. Especially now, the unemployment issue here in Ethiopia is in alarming rates. So we give a capacity building training, soft skill training, job readiness and employability skills for young talents here in Ethiopia through our career path trainings, also employability training centers. We also have a hub, we call it SDG Hub here in Addis. We are probably the leading youth-led organization who actually focus on those 17 sustainable development goals, especially as we have almost 28 United Nations agencies here in Ethiopia, and as well as the headquarters of Africa Union is here in Addis Ababa. Most of the young people here in Ethiopia are not aware of those agencies and as well as the Africa Union. So as SafeLight, we are trying to fill the gap and do the advocacy, bringing the local young people to these international agencies and as well as the Africa Union, so that we create opportunities, exposure, networking, and collaboration and partnership with these organizations. Not only that, but also we are focusing on youth civic engagement here in Ethiopia. As you know, we have been through several civil wars and conflicts, especially in the northern part of the country. We have had a very tragic civil war, especially in the past 2 or 3 years, and the victims are, as you know, the young people. So we're trying to build and reconcile those traumas and issues. So we give psychosocial support for the young people here in Ethiopia. And as well as we're trying to create a peaceful dialogue and as well as peace building and civic engagement activities here in Ethiopia. So those are some of the experience we have Safe Lights. But if you have more questions and regarding specific projects or focus areas or programs that we are running, I'm welcome to answer your question. And thank you so much. You may now unmute yourself.
I will be asking you a question along the lines about impact of your organization, how that is helping to drive that change you just mentioned during your introduction. My next question is for general question is for Sussex.
Okay.
As a youth advocate, what do you see as the biggest challenge hindering youth-led initiative in Africa, economic and social development, and how can they be overcome through what you do?
Hello, everyone. So I am a managing member of Broad Heart Human Development. And in simple terms, we revamp well-being, in simple terms. But to your question, because that's what we're here, and not to talk about me, I'm going to actually have a list of things that I have written down about the biggest challenges hindering youth-led initiatives in Africa's economic and social development. The first one is limited access to resources. Now, you had started, when we started, you gave one fact, and that fact was that 60% of Africa's population is under 25. I'm going to give us more facts. I love numbers. 62.2% of South Africa's youth live in extreme poverty. 58.1% of South Africa's youth aged 15 to 24 are unemployed. 35.6% of South Africa's youth aged 25 to 34 are unemployed. All of the world's top 10 youngest countries by median age are in Africa. Niger has the youngest median age at 14.9 years old. Africa has 11.2% rate of youth unemployment, and this is an average for Africa. And then when you go to the west, the east, the north, this changes because an average for a whole continent does not necessarily determine the reality of each country at per capita and absolute rates. Poverty levels in Africa have declined in most countries, but let's revert back to the question. Limited access to resources. Many young leaders, like myself, face challenges in accessing funding, mentorship, and technology needed to scale initiatives. I don't think there's any more that I can say because everyone in this room, everyone seated with me here that has tried to do something has faced these challenges. As an established corporation, even if you have an LLC, finding funding is not easy. Now come to Africa, where FDIs are dwindling because of the rate of lack of economic growth and GDP. And due to that, if it's hard for corporations in Africa who actually are for profit to get FDI, talk about social entrepreneurs who are doing nonprofits and our youth. There's high unemployment rates, which I have mentioned, 11.2% to over 60% of youth unemployment remains a major issue, making it difficult for young people to invest time and effort in their projects. You can love and have passion for something as a young person, but you have to pay rent. You have to shop for clothes. You have to live the luxury life that you want. And if you had a job, you would be able to actually have all these things and focus on that passion and not care about the money. Because I feel like a lot of times when we're in spaces like this, we focus on fluffiness of those things, but there are real things that people face every day that hinder them from even saying, oh, I have this idea about an app. How do I go about it? Can I build this app? But I can't do any of these things because I have to work 40 hours a week. And I can't even find a job to even give me 40 hours a week. And I'm talking about in the Western world where there is even that level of access to the minimal point. In Africa, people refuse to retire. Literally, people change their ages every year so they do not retire. I'm looking at grassroots, I'm seeing these things, I'm asking questions, I'm going into offices. People reduce their years, they change their birth dates because they do not want to retire. And the core of the issue is not necessarily because they want to lie or they love to lie, but the economy is bad. If they're retired, there will be old pensions. They will become like nobodies on the streets looking for money. So they would rather stay and work. And what does that cause us young people? We don't get into those offices. We don't get to get the jobs. We go for interviews and they tell us, oh, we'll call you back, and they never call back. Even though we are qualified, sometimes overqualified. Because honestly, some of the knowledges that they're using in some offices in Africa are completely redundant. They are non-progressive, they have no innovation, and young people have these innovations and updated knowledge. But we don't get access to these places because these people don't want to retire. There's education quality and relevance. There's a need for improved education systems that provide relevant skills and entrepreneurship training. There's policy and regulatory barriers. Thank God for people like him. Honestly, I've spoken to Ulisa without realizing that he actually works for the president. There's another guy I spoke to, Babacar. When I first met Babacar, I didn't realize these people have genuine interests that when you speak to them, you thank God that there are young people somewhere in Africa that's doing something, no matter how little, in the government. And now, gender inequality. Young women in Africa face even more rejection than young men would, because you should be in your husband's house. What are you doing launching a business? Why are you launching a business? Leave it for the men. They'll provide for you. So we need to take action and engage them in economic and social development issues to overcome these challenges. I'm going to just go straight there. Access to resources. Governments and organizations can establish youth-focused funds. We do not want generalized funds and generic grants. Youth-focused funds. Youth employment. Encourage public-private partnerships to create more job opportunities and promote entrepreneurship through targeted programs and incentives. If you told a company that if you employ this percentage of youth, we will give you a tax abatement, what do you think is going to happen? Companies will employ more youth to have access to that, to that tax abatement. Education reforms invest in education systems that emphasize practical skills and entrepreneurship training, bridging the gap between education and employment. Because it seems like companies end up educating people again after they've had an education. So we need to be able to train people to go straight into the labor market and be activated without extra training. Young people, I believe young people are already doing that because we have YouTube, we have all of these other education platforms that I see. I personally learned data myself online. And I believe that the people who are mostly customers and clients to these schools online are young people. Gender inclusion, as I mentioned, by addressing these challenges and implementing supportive policies and programs, Africa can empower its youth to drive economic and social development effectively. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow. Well, that's great. My next question is for you, Jediah. Your organization have been in existence for more than 2-3 decades, and prior to this section, you did say you're one of the youngest since the history of the organization. Could you tell us how the organization you lead envision the future of youth-led initiatives in contributing to economic and social development across Africa?
Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening to anyone joining from as far away as Ethiopia or elsewhere. I'm Jadiah Mohammed, pleased to meet you. To answer your question, so I'm the executive director of the International Youth Leadership Institute, an organization that's been around for 34 years, though I'm not yet 34. But I was appointed as the executive director of my organization after my mentor, Michael Webb, had asked me. And so he was like, I was 20 at the time, and he was 3 times my age and then some. But this organization, what we do is we provide opportunities. Really, our goal is to shift the paradigm for what has occurred to people of African descent after centuries of colonization and then neo-colonial ways of being and policies that have impacted us. Where even in countries where we are the majority, we are treated like second-class citizens oftentimes, even in countries where, we are the majority, we still don't own the structures, the infrastructure, our own resources, where countries that actually don't have natural resources can call themselves first world nations, whereas we are developing nations, even though the resources are under our feet. So our founders back in 1989 decided that they wanted to shift that dynamic. And so they had, 2 Black American men sat in a restaurant somewhere here in New York City, and they were like, we ought to do something about this. And this is 1989, before there was internet, before the Black Panther came out, where the narrative around Africa, people in America didn't, Afrobeat, what? There was so many, there was so much that we didn't have at that time, but they resolved that rather than, it's like Frederick Douglass once said, that it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. Broken people, right? So they opted to, rather than lose a whole nother generation to the same neo-colonial ways of being that have oppressed us and then led us to then oppress our own selves, they decided to start the International Youth Leadership Institute. And so many years after they founded the organization in '89, I encountered the organization as a high school student. I forgot to mention this. This is extremely important, everybody. Everybody listening. So I'm from Brooklyn. Yeah. I had to say that. Okay. But being from Brooklyn, I'm from Bed-Stuy, same neighborhood that such illustrious people as Shirley Chisholm, Jay-Z, Notorious B.I.G., myself. That was so fun. Okay, but what I'm saying is that you know how we are, people of African descent, we make anywhere we're from cool and dope, and we will represent. That's just part of the package. And one of the things that just gives me a lot of pride, one, to be in this conversation with all of you. But yeah, where I'm from what they would call the hood. Youth from the hood, we don't get to travel to Africa. We don't get to, a lot of people of African descent here in America, because of, centuries of what has happened to us here. And if you may not be familiar with what has happened to us here through the transatlantic slave trade, one of the practices was to sell children away from their parents and put people together who don't speak each other's language. And so when you don't speak the same language, you don't get to know where you're from. So then the result is generations of people who don't know where their ancestors are from, and then who have a flag to wave, but the same flag, is the flag of maybe a country that was colonizing where your people are from. It results in a disconnect between our peoples, where because we end up speaking different languages or we have different cultures, you have, oh, well, I'm African American, I'm African, I'm from this tribe, I'm from that tribe, and then like it manifests here in the United States context. Even people from different boroughs, different cities, different blocks may have what we call beef or disagreement, and it's like that same, I saw a quote that said that that trauma decontextualized in a person can become a personality. Trauma decontextualized in a family can become family traits, and trauma decontextualized in society can become culture. And so our way of culture it teaches us to not appreciate each other. So to answer your question about how we see the development of youth in the African continent and youth of African descent around the world, what we see and what we strive for is to be a platform where we can come together, get to understand each other, right? Because, well, in our model and how I got involved in the organization, I encountered the International Youth Leadership Institute when I was in high school. And they gave me a scholarship to travel to Tanzania. I've told you about this. And it was just life-changing for me to be a girl from Brooklyn, getting to see people who look like me, but are speaking Kiswahili, and then getting to learn and understand from the leaders there. Because truthfully, even though, literally, thank you so much for bringing those facts. Like, it's so important. We know as young people the struggle that we go through to say you have a beautiful idea in your mind that you want to accomplish, but I do not have $5 billion. I'm not yet a billionaire. I don't have all of those resources just yet. However, what we do have, like, no one person beyond the fire concept, like no one person can overcome the condition of their people. We have produced many greats like from us, like we've produced the whole world. We've built where you all are standing. I'm not sure who all here is from. If you are actually from New York City, can you raise your hand? Okay, so that means there's not many of us. So fun fact or unfun fact about where we are sitting right now in this moment, Wall Street is called Wall Street because when New York City was founded, there was once literally a wall. It separated from north and south. And then north of that wall, people of African descent, Black people, we were enslaved here. We were not allowed to be buried within the city confines, so we had to be buried on the outside. So actually a few blocks away from here, you'll find the African burial ground. When we say that these countries were literally built on our backs, when I say literally, if you go there and you'll see even small children, like you'll see like some of the skeletons that were found of African peoples who literally helped to build up. And there's trillions of dollars that get transacted through this area every single day. Are y'all still with me? Yeah. So y'all, let's check this out. Like in this space, if you just look around and remember the fact that like literally like Africans helped to build this space. And when I say built on our backs, I mean, one, we built it brick by brick. But then on top of that, built on our backs as in underneath some of these buildings, they're still finding the skeletal remains of African peoples. I mean, I've seen the skeletons of children and their spines are bent like question marks because they were forced to carry things that were so heavy. So what I'm saying is that the contributions that we have made to this world are truly invaluable. And it's first of all time that we start to take advantage of it to get our reparations. That's a whole nother, maybe there's another question about that question. But on top of that, no one person can overcome the condition of their peoples, but together we have everything we need. So in getting to travel and go to Tanzania and get to see, I got to learn from great leaders out there in Dar es Salaam, Arusha, Pangani, Zanzibar, and getting to learn about what the leaders doing here that I can go and take back to my own home and learn what I can to help our people. And that also helps to combat brain drain as well, where it's like, we go, we make it, it's like, yeah, I'm good. It's like, I'm good, but are your people back home still suffering? The whole point is to go and learn what you can so you can bring it back. And that's kind of, we'll get further into that. I could go on forever, but the whole point is partnership and ownership. We together have what we need and none of us have to do it alone. And that's what will help to change some of those statistics that Success was mentioning earlier. Glad to be here with y'all. I'm gonna pass it back to you. Wow. Yeah. I know that was a lot.
Well, we can't do it alone. And I think that's one of the rationale why we are here in New York City to, to be part of the UNGA, to push the SDGs further. For some of us, we had the real privilege to be at the GA hall during the SDG Action Weekend. And it is so profound to be in that space and hear the UN Secretary General say something very profound. He said the SDGs is not about checking the box. They are about the hopes, dreams, rights, expectations of the people, and the health of our natural environment. They are about addressing historic wrongs, healing global divisions, and putting our world on a path to lasting peace. He went further to say, today only 15% of the targets are on track, with many going into reverse. I want us to reflect on what the UN Secretary General said during the opening ceremony of the SDG Action Weekend. Do you all think, as a policymaker, do you think it is just to check the box? Or do you think it represents the aspiration and hopes of the people of Africa and elsewhere, and also our social entrepreneurs and also youth change makers? Do we all think it is about checking the box, or does it represent aspiration and hope for what each and every one of us do?
Who? Anyone?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a general question.
All right, I think I'll take that. I personally think it's about taking action, and not just as young people, if we're going to be part of that process, it's about taking strong actions, because whatever decisions are taken towards achieving the SDGs are probably not meant to affect the old folks, not meant to affect the current generation, but they would affect the generations yet unborn, or perhaps the ones coming after us. So 7 years from now, the decisions we make on climate change, the actions we take towards achieving those goals, would affect our kids, and to a certain extent even affect us. So I think it involves us taking the action as young people, being primarily involved, not just about checking the box and we've done this, we've done that, but making it a culture, making it something we're committed to and to achieving. For Sierra Leone, I'll tell you, we're at a point where it's inspiring to see young people taking drastic actions to achieve the SDGs. It's really inspiring. Inspiring to see a young man who would start his own recycle company. I mean, small company though, but he basically picks plastic and other things that he recycles and turn into things we can use. It's inspiring to see school clubs starting the agriculture in school, like a green club in school, where primary school children can actually start small farming, in their backyard of their school. It's also inspiring to see young people involved in waste management. And, speaking of employment being a key issue, I am proud to say that, my president made a promise of creating 500,000 new jobs, 500,000 new jobs in the next 5 years. That's amazing. But guess what? Most of these jobs will be tied to, innovation. That is why currently today we have a Ministry of Innovation and Communication being headed for the first time by a 32-year-old female in Sierra Leone. And I think that is also a round of applause. Yes, my president. Exactly. For the first time, it's a new ministry, but imagine having a female leading that. And this would practically bring solutions to most of our problems we have, most of the things we want to do to achieve the SDGs, solutions in the area of technology, in innovation and all. And it's also keen to note that young people in Sierra Leone are effectively using social media to advocate for causes related to, gender-based violence or the issues around climate change. They're using their voices. One key individual amongst them is a female musician called Fantasy. I don't know if any of you here know Fantasy. Okay, I'm indirectly marketing her music. Check her on YouTube. Exactly. Fantasy is a female musician. She's like let me use the right word. She's like the big elephant in the room when it comes to advocating for women's rights. I mean, sometimes even in conversations with her, I have to be careful, because once you go this way, she'll be like, okay, so what are you trying to say? Exactly. So we're having young people use their voices, use social media effectively to actually take action. And we're in a generation where young people are the key drivers of social media, or key drivers of technology. And indeed, we're having young people innovate solutions that are solving issues and problems that we're facing in Africa and across. And I can proudly say, Sierra Leone is on the verge of achieving that. We have people in the room who are young, and by no mistake, I'm sure the highest representation in this room from an African country is from Sierra Leone. I can proudly say that with a wave of hand. Show me if you're from Sierra Leone. that shows you how committed we are. We even have the daughter of the president of Sierra Leone in our meeting as well. Shows how connected we all are together in achieving these goals and ensuring that Sierra Leone is now the leader in that goal. And trust me, we're making it a commitment, and this is a testament to show that.
That's great.
You want to read?
Yeah, reflect on that.
All right. Hold on. So I'm going to answer this way. The statement by the UN Secretary General highlights a crucial perspective on the SDGs. While the SDGs are often seen as a framework with specific targets and indicators, they are fundamentally about addressing the real needs, hopes, and aspirations of people, as well as the health of our planet. The SDGs are not meant to be a mere check the box exercise. That's actually a very funny thing. They represent a commitment to addressing historical injustices, bridging global divides, and achieving lasting peace and sustainability. However, the concern raised about 15% of the targets being on track underscores the challenges and gaps in implementing these aspirations effectively. Someone in this room, I don't know if she's here, heard me one time. I had a roundtable at the UN, and people use this word implementation so much. I'm like, that word is tired of being used in sentences where nothing is happening. Everyone is fluffing the answers. Everyone wants it to look good, and everyone is doing nothing.
Yeah.
In Africa, as in many other regions, the SDGs hold significant potential, keyword, to uplift millions of people who are marginalized or left behind. They provide a roadmap for governments, organizations, and individuals to work together to improve living conditions, reduce inequalities, protect the environment, and promote peace. To fulfill the truth spirit of the SDGs, it's essential for stakeholders to prioritize implementation. We remember that word, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Allocate resources effectively, involve local communities, and monitor progress rigorously. Have you ever heard of the Youth Development Index? Anyone? Okay, great. I'm talking to the right audience. Ultimately, the SDGs are about transforming lives and ensuring that no one is left behind, making them far more than a checkbox framework. This is what my response is to that. That's my reaction. Thank you.
So let's just go.
Oh, he's gone.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, to be honest, my thoughts are, pretty brief. Like when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, I mean, they are great. Like who in their right mind would argue with clean water for all, right? That's not,
Yeah.
and the odd part is that when you talk in like a corporate context, that there really are companies that continue to pollute our earth every single day. It's like, they don't say, I disagree with clean water with their words, but they totally say it with their actions, which is kind of funny. And by funny, I mean horrible for all of us, and horrible for our planet. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I think they make like a good tool to rally us around. And I was really concerned to hear that we're only making like 15% of, like in terms of progress with the SDGs, considering we only have 7 years until 2030. And hey, with this pandemic, we all know like time is zooming like that, right?
Yep.
I mean, it is going by really quick. So that is honestly very concerning and disturbing, to be honest. But something that concerns me even more is the fact that the progress and the metrics that we have in regards to the Sustainable Development Goals don't necessarily even reflect the more specific realities for us where we are. So you talk about the Youth Development Index. I'm thinking about also the, what's the Black Development Index looking like around the world right now. So for example, when we're talking about progress toward the SDGs, the country I live in, the United States, has, on
Planetary level.
well, let's use clean water as an example, since I started there, right? The U.S. can say, yeah, we have clean water, for our citizenry. Like it's a place where you can, run the tap, wash your face, generally not have to worry about, contracting diseases. Most people don't have to travel very far to access water. You could say, oh, the United States is doing quite well. But Howard Law students, so one thing I hadn't mentioned, I also co-chaired the youth subcommittee of the International Civil Society Working Group for the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. And so just as an FYI, just something to bookmark in your mind, the UN did create in 2021 by a vote of the General Assembly a permanent forum for people of African descent. So that is a group of people who have been tasked with representing and collecting information and data that directly impacts people of African descent around the world, across the entire continent, and then the sixth region, which is the African diaspora. But then that also is like an actual forum, as in a conference that happens every 2 years or so, between New York and Geneva. And it is another space for you to engage because you can talk about the SDGs, but within that particular context, just as a heads up. So I co-chair the youth subcommittee for that group. And the thing is, a group of youth from Howard Law School did research on the SDGs in reference to specifically predominantly Black neighborhoods or Black cities in the United States of America. So you could say the US is making great progress with clean water, but ask the people in Flint, Michigan, ask the people in Jackson, Mississippi, Newark, New Jersey, and clean water is not actually so accessible. Like there's still lead in the water in Flint, Michigan to this day. I mean, and if you don't know the impact of what lead can do, not only does it poison your body and stunt your growth, it can also lead to mental health disorders. And then that can also lead to, more crime, more police involved incidents, more deaths. Like there's a lot that comes from having access to clean water, or at least water that won't, poison you, literally. So when we get down to a more minute level and we actually look at, well, how does this impact us? What do we do about it? How does this impact, what does it have to do with me? It has a lot to do with all of us, actually. So it's why, one, we should care about them, but then two, we're going to need some more data about us in particular so that we can get the real picture about what's going on. Because the picture, though 15% is looking quite bleak, period, is looking a bit bleaker for us. We have to be honest. And so but being honest with that knowledge also gives us the power to do something about it because we know what we're working with, right? So thank you.
That's great.
That?
Can you react within 1 minute?
I don't think you heard the question. I don't know if it was here.
Yeah. I didn't hear you mention.
Yeah.
Well, during the SDG weekend, the UN Secretary General did say that the SDG is not about checking the box. It is about the aspiration and hopes of the people on the planet. Can you react to that statement real quick, if possible?
Yeah. There's thank you. So for a country like Ethiopia, the very first issue that we are facing regarding SDG is the localization and sensitization issues. Since we have got 7 years from now and on, people are not aware of the SDGs, so there's no way that they could able to contribute to the goals. So what we do as Safe Light, we're trying to advocate the goals and sensitization, localization, because some of the goals are not, fully localized for our situations. So we have got so many priorities that we need to focus, but aligning those goals to the sectoral plans, aligning those goals to the local issue should be the priority. So we're trying to, as a youth-led organization and as a leading SDG advocates organization, we're trying to focus more on the advocacy and localization part rather than doing those, indexes. Thank you.
Out of time, I'll open it up for one question from the audience.
Oh, well, that was quick.
One is more.
Thank you so much for this insightful presentation. It's quite deep and very, very much on point. Speaking from experience, I just want you people to quickly address the issues of the African brain drain, knowing that most of the youngsters that we have in the country, the potentials of that country,
Okay.
some of them never return home, some of them leave.
Okay.
So could you just quickly,
I'm over here.
1 minute,
Well, from
elaborate on that?
thank you so much for your
Okay.
wisdom. From
Okay.
policy
Go
and then
after.
solution based.
Okay. From policy, I think my country has taken the first step. That is having someone who coordinates diaspora youth affairs. That's my role as a youth envoy. And so one of the key initiatives we're working on, and fortunately today you had a meeting, one of the sessions with the IOM, is to see how we can organize diaspora youths who basically possess the skills and potential needed to, harness our group back home, to see how we can motivate them through sessions to basically encourage them to come back home, to see reasons to invest in the country, and also to create a database. For my part, as a country, we're also working with what we call the Young Professionals Forum, where we are identifying Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora, young people practically who've got skills and other things to offer to the government of Sierra Leone to go back and basically contribute to development. And I'm proud to say that relatively, it's unlike many other places, but Sierra Leone is one place where even diasporans are given a chance to be part of the government and also to be part of developments in the country. So yes, we are currently working on having youth summits globally where we'll engage young people to basically sell the idea of going back home and support them through the process of going repatriation, starting their businesses, and basically usher them into the entire process of establishing and coming back, not just being out there, but we identify them and bring them back.
Well, since we have three entrepreneurs, one of you can provide
I'll go.
an answer.
I think that what he just did was tell you the solutions. And I'm going to tell you why it's happening. Lack of access. I cannot count the amount of friends I have that said, I'm going to go to school in Europe. I'm going to go back to Nigeria. I'm Nigerian, by the way. I'm going to go back to Nigeria and I'm going to work. They went back and left because of the environment of the labor force. There's no access. You're not giving young people access to decision making. You're not giving them access to participation is the problem. No, participation is not the problem. We want to participate. We don't have access to participate. You're not including us. So what he just said are solutions. The reason they're leaving, because you cannot go to school, study for a long time and just sit down and do nothing when there's someone somewhere that needs you somewhere in the world and is willing to pay for your craft handsomely. You would rather go to where you're properly valued than where you're not. This is why brain drain happens anywhere in the world, actually. Africans in particular have been raised to be very hard workers, and so when you go to places and show that diligence, they want to pay you handsomely for that. And you think, but when I was there, they were not giving me half what I'm getting here. Why would I want to go there? Yep. So you need to give us incentives that will make us come back.
I think also I'll be quick, I promise. It's just that there's also just like that responsibility that we also have to accept our own responsibility to make our own communities like decent and safe places to live. Is incredibly important because at the end of the day, if we continue in the direction that we're going with those issues, with that lack of access, then we'll just continue to build up places that are already quite built up at the expense of, leaving our people behind. And then the next generation has to start all over again and end up in our same situation, if not somewhere worse. So this is why it's important that we continue with that intentionality in whatever field you're in, whether you're working in medicine, whether you're working in business, whether you're working in fashion, whatever it is, that you keep that intentionality in mind, that you will be doing what you can to help the world and help your people and help your community too. So thank you.
Well, we have come to the conclusion of this section. From my own perspective, this is my reaction. Africa remains a continent that is on a trajectory towards economic growth and prosperity. Many of the sections I have attended, I've heard the word Africa more than 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It means that if we take the energy we have in this room and go out there, we will be marketing Africa as the next frontier. I do believe that there is more work to be done in addressing some of the challenges, get the private sector involved. But we are Africans. It is our home. So, thank you.
The whole world is our Yes. Not but and. Our
And,
home.
yeah.
And the whole thing.
and the whole thing. Thank you.